Have you ever been playing a fan game and you really wanted to know what the best fan game from the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise was? Well, that's what we will be going over in this video. Sit back, enjoy, grab a snack, and let's get into the video. Today I will be going over what I personally think is the best Five Nights at Freddy's fan game is. The factors taken into account for this ranking will be scare factor, learning curve, mechanics, originality, environment, and finally jump scares, totaling 30 points. So with that being said, here is the top 5 best Five Nights at Freddy's fan games ever made. We will be ranking them all based off the factors I just named. Without any further ado, let's begin. Coming in at 5th place will have to be Dormitabis. Besides any of the backlash the creator got for this game, which he obviously deserved, very heavily. The game is still an extraordinary Five Nights at Freddy's fan game. The story of the game is pretty good, obviously with its ups and downs from the creator, since he's a maniac. However, it also has some good parts to it as well. The scare factor of this game is absolutely insane. The animatronics in this game are just so beaten down and broken, to the point it makes them just utterly terrifying when you see them. Especially Chica. Chica is by far one of the scariest animatronics in this game. The way you move around this game with the grainy affects along with the junky movements, this makes you have a feel that the game is extremely old. Which it isn't, but it's a nice touch to add that feel to it. The learning curve is a fun one. There are plenty of mechanics you have to worry about. With Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy, they all have their own personal mechanic that is sometimes shared with other animatronics in the later nights. This game has pretty original characters, even though they are basically just more withered version of the characters from the first game. I'll give them some points just for making them so damn creepy. Now for the jump scares, this is where this game fails. The jump scares are pretty boring, all the same and predictable. You know, right when you're about to be killed. So it basically eliminates the scare factor jump scare wise. Overall, ignoring all of the crappy shit the developer of the game did, it is, in my opinion, one of the best Five Nights at Freddy's horror games out there. For scare factor, I will give them a 3. For learning curve, I will give them a 3. For mechanics, I will give them a 2. For originality, I will give them a 2. For environment, I will give them a 5. And for jump scares, I will give them a 2, totaling 1730 points, which equals a 56%, which may seem bad. But remember, there are plenty of fan games that are either bad because they are super old and outdated, or bad because of the amount of developers on the team. Let's move on to our number 4 spot. Graveyard Shift at Freddy's is the newest fan game on this list, which gives it some advantages. This game genuinely scared the shit out of me when I played. Now, it's not too hard, but my god is it good and exceptionally scary. Bonnie is by far the scariest in my opinion in this game. Just the way he looks. He looks like if someone skinned an actual rabbit alive and then glued its skin onto a costume. He just looks so realistic and freaky, I hate it. The scare factor for this game is insane. You have to worry about a bunch of characters from the original game but with different mechanics. Bonnie, you have to keep him away from your back door using audio quiz that will distract him. And even then you're not safe. If you get him away from your back door, he will still come to your front gate, where then he will creepily peer at you before he kills you if you don't shut the gate. Super spooky. Learning curve takes some time, but not enough time to where it's tedious and boring, but just enough where it's fun and scary for you. Can't really ask more than for that. The mechanics are pretty simple, however they are nonetheless pretty good mechanics. Simply shutting the gate when they get in front of you. Originality is kind of where this game lacks, it's just the original characters from the first game. However, they do have a few new characters, like Sheriff Slithers. If he is on the camera you are looking at, you can't change cameras until he leaves. Along with a few other characters like Ferguson the Ferret, the Cupcake, and the foxy counterpart who is now a wolf. The environment is absolutely bone-shattering. It's so quiet and you have no idea what's going on almost the entire time unless you have your cameras open. Vastly boosts its points in environment. Now the jump scare category. My god. The jump scares in this game make a grown man shit his pants. Like myself. They are so loud and just genuinely scary. Especially the little fricking out the game does after you die. It's sort of like a ROM hack. Finally, it's time to tally up the points for this amazing fan game. For scare factor, I will give it a 4. For learning curve, I will give it a 4. For mechanics, I will give it a 3. For originality, I will give it a 3. For environment, I will give it a 4, and for jump scares, I will give it a 5. Totaling 23 out of 30, which equals 76%, getting better onto the third spot in the list. I think we all knew that Juniors would be on this list. I mean, come on, it's one of the most popular fan games for a reason. The characters are absolutely terrifying. And the story is just perfect. And just interesting to follow along with. First is the scare factor. Man, this game does that super well. Even though they took the original characters from the first game, they made them monsters. They are absolutely terrifying. They look rotten and like cartoon children's book characters. The part of the game where you have to replace their battery or whatever it is scary at first. However, it is kind of ruined after your first interaction since you never really get scared after that. However, the mechanics on the repair value of the animatronics mixed with the ghost hunting mechanic. The scare factor is phenomenal. Learning curve is where this game falls off drastically. Once you know what you're doing, then you're basically set up until the mangle fight later on. The game is quite easy up until then, in my opinion at least. So I feel the learning curve is way too easy to detect. Originality is most definitely one of this game's strong suits. I can't think of any fan games off the top of my head that has implemented the factors of this game, especially with the ghost hunting. The environment is kind of simple, however. You're just in a basic office with a basic computer and some basic Five Nights at Freddy's elements. There are a few cool things though, like the night vision on the cameras and the mascot head in your office. Other than that, there's not much to comment on. And finally, the jump scares. They are pretty menacing, but nowhere near something along the lines of Graveyard Shift. I think they did a good job with the jump scares. However, I think they are sort of in the middle of predictable. And not. You'd have to play the game to know what I mean. But nonetheless, the jump scares are pretty damn good. Finally, we have come to the conclusion on our third spot on this list. Scare factor will be a 4. Learning curve will be a 2. Mechanics will be a 5. Originality will be a 5. Environment will be a 5. And jump scares will be a third, totaling 24 out of 30. Just narrowly beating Graveyard Shift, making it have an 80%. You may be thinking, how can the games get better? Well, stick around and find out what games are better and how. We're almost there. On to the number 2 spot. Yup, obviously Joy of Creation had to make it on the list. It's the OG that lives up to the hype to this day. Joy of Creation has been out for more than a decade and it still is amazing to this day. After the remake, the game got even better. You have 5 different nights, and each night gives you different scenarios to go up against. My favourite being Scott's office. The scare factor from this game is definitely one of the best, since you have to worry about a new event and scenarios every single night. You never really know what's going to happen to you, and that is terrifying. Learning curve is so fun. It's not too hard each night, but you have a new challenge every single night. To learn the mechanics of each night can be fun or annoying, depending on the person you are. Me personally, I love the challenge, as well as the mechanics being so easily to learn it. Just makes it fun. Yet again, for the mechanics it is just amazing. You're stuck inside of a house, you have nothing to defend yourself besides your everyday essentials in your house. It's scary because if these guys were real, this game is the closest we would get to it being reality. The jump scares in this game are pure gold. They don't just use the typical screaming in your face bit. But all of the animatronics have their very own way at how they kill you. For example, Bonnie's classic jump scare where he punches you right in the face. The environment is absolutely amazing. They have one of the best graphics for a fan game by far. The loadout may be a bit simple, but it doesn't need to do too much since the setting of the game takes place inside of a house. Finally, let's tally up the points on our verdict. Scare factor, I'll give it a 3. Learning curve, I'll give it a 5. Mechanics, I'll give it a 5. Originality, I'll give it a 4. Environment, I'll give it a 4. And jump scares, I'll give it a 5. This totals 26 points out of 30 points, which equals an 86%. Now you may be wondering what could possibly be better than Joy of Creation. Some of you may already know, and others might not know. But regardless, let's get into our number 1 pick for the best Five Nights at Freddy's fan game ever made to date.
Where's my boat? I've got a hat on my head. This hat is mine.
Oblitus Casa did what Treasure Island failed to do. Here, you start inside of a dusty old cabin that is located in Discovery Island. You are playing as the same character from the Treasure Island game. He tries to hide from the monsters in a cabin after the first game. However, he was found by all of them, and having to relive his nightmare once again. Jake has nothing to help him this time, other than a notebook that tells him how to deal with the oncoming threats every night. The scare factor of the masterpiece is utterly insane. Inside a small dusty cabin with over 8 characters constantly after him at all times. There is so much to keep track of that you are constantly in fear. It hits 5 AM, you think you're going to survive, until this happens. That will scare the shit out of anyone who experiences it. The monsters constantly taunting you as the night goes on, talking to you the entire time. Now the scare factor for this game is already amazing, but there is one section of the game that truly makes the scare factor unbelievable. And that would be the tunnel section of the game. I personally hate this part of the game, however, it is most definitely one of the scariest parts of the game. You're walking aimlessly around a dark tunnel trying to find a key to escape with a giant monster stalking you the entire time. This monster is the same monster from the 6th night in Treasure Island, Hourglass. The learning curve for this game is amazing as well. It's not overly impossible to figure out, but it does take time and skill to figure out everything you're supposed to do. When it comes to preserving the audio, the camera flash, and deciding when to go in the attic or not. All of it may seem exhausting to remember. But trust me, it is so fun and rewarding when you do figure out all of the mechanics. Next is mechanics. I think this game did what Treasure Island had, but 100 times better. They now implement an attic mechanic, which lets you run up to the attic to fend off against the face, or to retreat from Pete, or to instantly get killed by Mother. The new notebook mechanic is the best mechanic by far in the game. It's so simple, yet it's so cool how they put in the mechanic. And then the casual music from the cameras and the light from the cameras. Not all too exciting, but nonetheless it's still amazing to think how many mechanics were put into this game. Originality is pretty good as well in this game. They did something no other game has done to my knowledge, and they added a second chance mechanic to it. If you were to die, you would be sent to the game's purgatory. If you complete a really difficult task, then you are rewarded with returning to where you died on that night. And not to mention the tunnel aspect of the game. So much is in this game, and it's just amazing to see how much love was put into it. The environment is easily on W of the best aspects of the game. You are inside a dusty old cabin all alone, where there are a bunch of monsters after you, and all you have is a little notebook, a music box, and a flashlight. Being inside a small old cabin is just so cool to be. Because if you are to look up pictures of Discovery Island, which is where this game takes place, there is actually a small cottage out on this island. so they basically took the knowledge from real life and made it into the game. Finally, the jump scares. They are nothing insane like Graveyard Shift. However, they are still better than Treasure Island by a mile. Some jump scares in this game you'll have no idea they're coming until it's too late. However, others are pretty obvious. My favourite jump scare in the game would most likely either be Dippy or second stage Mick Mick, just due to the fact of how Dippy breaks the window before coming in to kill you, and how Mick Mick lumbers his way into one of the office doors to come kill you like a spider. They are both just so creepy, and I would hate to have to deal with them had I been the one in the game except for Jake. We have finally reached the final verdict, where I will rate the #1 fan game ever made in my opinion. For scare factor, I will give it a 5. For learning curve, I will give it a 5. For mechanics, I will give it a 5. For originality, I will give it a 3.5. For environment, I will give it a 5, and for jump scares, I will give it a 4, totaling our final game to a 27.5 out of 30, which equals a 91.6%. If you guys agreed with me, let me know in the comments, and if you have a different fan game you like more than Obleda's Casa, please let me know as well. It always helps the channel if you guys like, subscribe, comment, share, and turn on post notification for more videos. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later. Bye.